Hey, I'm Danielle Damrell, and welcome to the Created Worthy podcast. On this show, you can join me as I sit down with women from a variety of ages, backgrounds, and experiences. Together, we will learn and grow from sharing each of our stories and experiencing the life-changing power of connection. So, whether you're here because you're a boss babe running your own empire and are just looking for some unconventional advice, or because you feel totally alone and are looking for stories to relate to, this is the podcast for you. You are welcome here. I believe we are all inherently worthy, and through faith, creative processing, and real connections, we can all continue moving forward to be the joy-filled, triumphant women we are created to be. Allison Woodley is a healthy lifestyle and mindset coach and the author of the book, The Unicorn Syndrome: Stop Trying to Be Unique. You Already Are. Allison's distinct approach to creating healthy lifestyle goes beyond exercise and diet and deep into emotional and spiritual intelligence. Before starting her business, after nearly a decade of working in the advertising industry, she felt called to start helping women create health and healing in their lives. Now, she dedicates her life to helping women transform from the inside out, spirit, mind, and body. Allison, thank you so much for joining me today on my podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited, and it's such an honor because you have such a beautiful podcast with just chatting with you, such a wonderful heart, and I'm just so excited to see where this goes for you. So thank you so much for having me on here. I feel very honored.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I would love to hear a little bit about your story and what led you to writing this book.
I usually go back to my journey back to childhood a little bit because that kind of paints a picture of who I was and that identity that I was shaping that's kind of shaped who I am and the transformation that I've been through the last couple of years. And one thing, and I talk about this in my upcoming book, The Unicorn Syndrome, is that I was sort of a chubbier kid when I was little. And, I had some thinner friends, and it wasn't something I ever noticed. Like there's a certain age where you kind of notice like, oh, there's different body types, and I have a certain body type. And I remember very distinctly when I was in about grade 6 or so. So I think you're around like age 11.
Yeah.
I remember a time when we were doing an activity in the classroom. We broke out into groups, and I specifically remember like sitting outside our classroom with some of our friends, and they started talking about their body weights. And I just remember hearing some of the weights of some of the other girls. And I was like, oh, they're like, that's a really low. I don't think my weight is that low. And it wasn't even anyone said about me or about my weight. I just remember putting all this judgment on myself of just like, oh, something's wrong with me. Like I should be less, even if it was 20 pounds or something, when you're that age, you're like, anyways, less. So that was the first time I remember feeling that subconsciousness about how I looked. And I think that spiraled with a couple of other events. I remember one time, maybe around the same age or grade, when two of my friends out in the playground told me that I needed to use diet pills. And I was like, what are diet pills? Like, what is a diet? Like, why? And just feeling off guard. And that made me kind of feel shy and insecure. And I don't remember ever talking about that with them ever again. I think we were still friends, but it just made me feel so like closed off, insecure, and like, why me? Like what's wrong with the way my body is?
I was also a chunky kid. And I remember those same feelings of just like, why am I bigger than everyone else? Like, why does it feel like everyone else looks this way and I look this way? So yeah, totally relate.
Yeah. So from there, I was active too. So I think when I went into high school, I maybe lost some of the baby weight, and I enjoyed playing sports, although I was never, ever an athlete. Like I didn't enjoy running, but I still kind of had this mentality, and I don't even know necessarily, it came from maybe those situations, things from the news, the media. Like I don't have any, like that's pretty much as sort of as impactful of stories as I remember of people making me feel that way. But throughout all of high school, I still had this kind of feeling of I need to lose weight. I'm not good enough. And that's when I started, reading fitness magazines and I started doing little at home. I'm like 15 years old and doing crunches and learning how to do push-ups in my room, wanting to look like the skinny fitness models in the magazines that you saw. I just remember really idolizing that, thinking that was like perfect beauty and that's what I needed to do, even though I'm 5'3", I'm short. Like I'm never ever gonna have that kind of body type, no matter like what kind of crazy diet. And that would never, now I know that never will bring happiness, that will never fulfill that feeling. So I really went through, even at a young age, learning, trying to do different diets, Weight Watchers.
Did you do that when you were young? Like
yeah,
you
when I was like a teenager. Okay. Yeah, I think when I was I did do some things with my mother. I think she did Weight Watchers, and maybe when I was like 17, 18, so getting a little bit older, we did that together, which is like kind of an interesting thing. But to her, it was kind of like, oh, when she was a teenager, I remember her telling me she had similar feelings and thoughts and like went through some of those things. So it can be generational sometimes too.
Yeah.
And so it was, I went through those things. I actually was at a point like just at the end of high school where I was a weight that I actually felt really good and comfortable in.
And were you playing sports at that time still?
I did, yeah. I played, I mean, again, I was never a really great athlete. Like I did swimming, I was a lifeguard, I played hockey, I played tennis.
Ooh, hockey. How fun.
Yeah, hockey.
Where are you from?
So I'm from Canada.
Okay.
So yeah. My brother, my dad, actually I was only the first girl in my whole family. My dad has 7 siblings, 8 out of all of them, and most of them played hockey. They were all boys though.
Right.
So I was the first girl in my family to play hockey, but again, absolutely terrible at it. I mean, I could skate. I started figure skating when I was really young.
Okay, so after high school, or at the end of high school, you hit your ideal weight, or so you thought, but you said it still wasn't bringing you any happiness overall, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think at that time I felt pretty good, and I wouldn't say I was unhappy in my body. I think I just felt like normal and
a normal kid.
Comfortable weight. Yeah. And then I went into university. And I think that's where most of my some of my disordered eating happened around those times. So university, I started doing some things that were a little less healthy. So I wasn't doing any of the sports anymore that I used to. So to me, exercise I started doing like intense spin classes, so cardio, or running, also cardio. Right. So no weight training, anything like that. It was just, for me, cardio was the exercise I needed to do if I wanted to be lean or maintain my weight, that sort of thing. But also university, of course, very common. I started drinking, eating like food, staying up later, although all throughout high school, I never drank. I always been a morning person, always been someone who very proactive in school and those sort of things. So university was kind of like a whole 360 of this is a different place. Yes, it was. And I think those maybe like old little triggers from when I was younger that I never really, cleared up. Like there's in some, I wouldn't say cultures, but some spiritual philosophies call them samskaras, emotional wounds that are placed within the body. And if we don't heal those or clear those up, they can sometimes fester or grow, and that sometimes can create disease, or sometimes maybe you could say mental imbalances, those sort of things. So I think those little wounds that I didn't really know were there, this was a time that kind of fed into them, because I wanted to find a boyfriend. I wanted to go to clubs and party and look like, a cute, hot girl. Those are, all those silly insecurity things that we think are, important at the time, or at least I did.
Especially being in university, you're on your own. Essentially, you get, for the first time in your life, get to
Yeah.
decide what you do with your time and how you feed your body and do your classes and just everything. It's a shock to the system for sure, and can
Yeah.
definitely lead to more chaos in some ways, because you're like, now I have to figure out my own processes, my own
Yeah.
systems, and health when you're young doesn't always feel like it needs to be a priority. So
Yeah.
very, very natural.
Yeah. That's very much how I was feeling. And it was, I think it just kind of added up and added up. And I was at a point where I was, not eating healthy, not sleeping well. And then found myself kind of falling into a binge eating cycle or binge drinking too, where I would drink a lot and then eat a lot and then sleep in late. And I started seeing my body gaining weight. And I just started feeling very uncomfortable in my skin. And so it was like a physical feeling.
Right.
And now looking back, I also see, oh, wow, my thoughts about myself were so negative. Because when I thought about doing exercise or changing my routine, it was more like, you have to do these things, or you need to do these hard things in order to change your body, to change who you are, because you're not good enough, rather than the perspective that I have now, that I only discovered a few years ago, is that health and fitness and self-love is all about building ourselves up. It's about, I am perfect and worthy and beautiful the way I am. My body has a natural healthy set weight. It's different from other people's. That's okay.
Right.
And when I choose to, what I choose to eat, when I choose to sleep, how I choose to nourish my mind, my body, that builds me up. And rather than, trying to tear yourself down through a restrictive diet or through punishment, through exercise, those sort of things. So it took me a while to get there, but that's really the journey that I take people through in my book. The Unicorn Syndrome too is kind of this whole journey of where I was in that sort of very negative self-talk, lots of self-hate, some binge eating in terms of just not nourishing my body, and then jumping into restrictive cycles and kind of repeating that over and over again until I got to the point of changing.
So tell me a little bit about that. I'd love to hear what your transformation point was. Like, what made you go from feeling so negative about your body and who you are, on a physical level and mentally, emotionally, to the place that you're at now?
Yeah, I would say that when I think I was just about graduating university, so near the end, and was kind of at a peak point of what is my body doing? What have I done? When I started dating my now husband, and I met his sister and my now brother-in-law, and they were personal trainers, or just his sister was kind of like a year into personal training, and they were both in a phase where they were doing bodybuilding competitions. And I went to her fitness show. Actually, first when I met her, she was just starting her prep for her show, and she actually looked very similar to me in terms of her body shape and size, maybe a little bit leaner, just a little stronger in some ways. But I saw her go from when I first met her to when she was standing on stage for her competition. And I remember just sitting in the audience, and it was more a feeling of, oh my gosh, if she can do that, if she can transform her from, at the time I could only see physical, so if she can transform her physical body that way, then surely I could do. Surely there's enough in me to have the self discipline, although now it's also a matter of self-love, taking to learn the discipline to create the habits of health and self-love in order to get to that point. But that just inspired me so much. So from there, I decided to start working with my brother-in-law. He was very nice, and he's a incredible coach. So he just took me into the gym and showed me how to use all the machines and weights and dumbbells, showed me how to squat and lift weights. And I remember I had no like physical upper body strength, anything like that. So it was
Yeah.
totally new to me. I was used to being a runner or trying yoga, the spin, like I said.
Right.
I tried
Cardio and weight training.
insanity. Yeah,
Very different.
very different. And I just fell in love with it right away, actually. I mean, it was challenging and hard and I had to learn a lot, but I was just like, oh, this makes me feel so strong.
Yeah.
And with that, I just let it keep growing and growing. And that just inspired me and it gave me something positive to focus on. And it just made me feel so good to start seeing the changes and the transformation happen that way. So that's really what inspired me and helped me stick to that change, just getting some clear guidance from someone with someone with really great knowledge and then beginning that journey. So that was about 10 years ago now when that first started.
Wow. I really love how you talked about self-love and how that is the foundation to health in general. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
It took me a while to get there, to be honest. I wish I jumped into my that first moment where I started, working with my brother-in-law and learning about health and nutrition, that the self-love and everything clicked right away. But I actually went like up, and it was not a linear journey to getting to where I am right now, that's for sure. It took a while to learn that. The journey that's taken me there is when I first started working with him and learning how to build strength and working on real health habits rather than just only a dieting mentality.
Right.
I decided to, which is at the time a bit of a still kind of that dieting mentality, I decided to do a fitness competition too. So at the same time, I decided to do a fitness competition and I wanted to become a personal trainer. So I actually was graduating school, and instead of taking a like junior position at an ad agency, I decided to get hired as a trainer at a gym, and that I was going to do that to help. I had a feeling after just a couple of months of doing this like weightlifting and training in that I wanted to help people right away. So I did become a personal trainer and I was working on competing in a show. And so this was all just in like maybe 6 month time period.
Oh, wow.
And I think then my mindset was still a bit about the diet and about very health focused on, okay, I need to do this process. I need to do all these things well and do them right. And that will get me to this end goal. And then I'll feel good because I'll be leaner, I'll be stronger, and that'll be it. And then it'll be done. Mm-hmm. And so I really focused on doing those things, even when it was, kind of hard. And sometimes I didn't have love and enjoy in the process as much as I love learning as I went. I still had some struggles because I hadn't worked on or figured out that self-love aspect. So there was still some of that negative talk, still some of that, you need to be doing this to be a certain size to, fit into a bikini, even for the beach, to look good, to feel good. So even though I was going through that journey that had some really positive aspects of learning about proper health, I still had this negative self-talk aspect of it. So after I did that show, I ended up actually very quickly rebounding, which is very common for a lot of women after doing some very restrictive dieting, eating, although I wouldn't say I had a negative experience with the show, because I still learned a lot and I didn't get so lean where it was like unhealthy. I didn't cut carbs, I didn't cut water, I didn't do some of those things that are very common when you hear girls talking about shows. It was very steady, gradual process, but I hadn't dealt with some of those emotional overeating issues. So because I hadn't dealt with any of those real emotions, I jumped right back into almost binge eating without even really realizing. It was kind of like I wasn't in my body when it was happening. It was just like out of my control. Mm-hmm. And I gained a lot of weight, and then I felt really even worse about myself because I had gone through this process and done all the things I'm supposed to do to make you healthy, eating the things, working out, getting sleep, all those things. And I still wasn't happy. I still felt bad in my body.
And were you still a personal trainer at that time?
I was, and that was actually very challenging too, because I felt that and even then people didn't talk about imposter syndrome then. It was, social media wasn't what it was now. It is now. And I felt that I'm supposed to be this, in some ways, I think I became a personal trainer because I thought if I'm a personal trainer, then I'll look like all those other
Yeah.
successful, fit, healthy female personal trainers. But that's not really how that works.
Right. Like
And
it
so I
still
had
takes.
that pressure on myself of like, oh, I don't look the part for this. So who am I to help people? I can't, so that was really challenging. And I think that sort of, being 23 at the time, 22, 23, pretty young, just like sort of freaked me out. And I actually stepped away from personal training from that. I was just like, this is not just for that reason. There was other things I just didn't enjoy about that job and why I went back into advertising. Which is funny because now I'm back into health. So it was kind of like that,
Full
that
circle,
imposter
right?
syndrome. Yeah. Not knowing how to deal with it, not knowing about the self-love, not knowing about spirituality and mental health. Everything then at that time, I'd say was about so focused on that physical health that I couldn't see those things. And I think that's where self-love has come in that whole process was after that show, I just kind of kept coming back and saying, I'm going to try again. And each time that I tried to, work on stopping the emotional eating, learning how to just focus on my health and do things a healthy way, which is different for everyone. So but I'm being a little bit general there. But I think that's how I eventually came around to discovering the self-love was just trial and error, learning that it's never going to be perfect. And I'm always going to be, this is just a journey I'm always going to be on. And eventually learning that it was about enjoying the process and not just about the outcome. It was never about just stepping on stage or just being that goal weight. It was all about just finding love and joy in, making a healthy salad and sitting outside and enjoying it. Be like, oh, this is nourishing my body. Like one of the things I do now every time before I eat is I just close my eyes and give grace for the food of just how grateful I am that someone somewhere picked this food from who knows where or grew it and it's ended up here. And I'm so grateful for the nutrients that it's going to give my body, how it's going to give me energy and make me feel good so I can go on and work the rest of my day, whether it's talking to people, helping people, like all that whole system of things. And I think that's really where the enjoyment in the process comes from. Is it's just those little moments. It doesn't have to be this like big grand thing. And I think that's really what that is all about.
Hi, I'm Ella. Please listen to our word from our sponsor.
Hi, this is Danielle Damrell, and I am the founder and artist behind Danielle Damrell Creative Collective. Over the last 3.5 years, I've been compiling resources, and I'm excited to have finally created a platform where you can easily find them. DDCC is a continuously expanding collection of creative products, blogs, graphics, and custom pieces that aim to spread love, truth, and vulnerable encouragement. Head over to my website, damrellcreativeco.com, to find all kinds of resources, from playlists to help you with intentional creative processing to Amazon recommendations for all types of crafty things. I've got you covered. Oh, and make sure to check out the Worthy Collection, my most recent collection for obvious reasons, where you can find hand-drawn stickers and prints. This collection consists of truths and revelations that I've experienced over the last year. Make sure to check out the product descriptions on my website to read the stories behind each of the designs. So again, that's Damrell, DAMRELL, creativeco.com. I am honored to be the sole sponsor of this show right now. But if you'd like to partner with me, purchasing from the Worthy Collection is an incredible way to do so.
Hey, didn't you set up a Patreon too?
Oh, yeah. You can find me over on Patreon now too. Okay, back to the story. I think that a lot of people are in a similar place, whether they have been in the past or are now, where that outcome is not your end goal. Like it can't be your end goal. Your end goal needs to be healthy. whole life healthy, lifestyle healthy, so that you can have a happy, healthy, joy-filled life. So I think that realization that you just shared is really, really important, because there's so much mixed messaging in the world right now. And I think it can cause a lot of people to feel alone.
It leaves you with this feeling in that moment, which actually we're going to get into the law of attraction now, is that feeling of lack, which is whether it's, for me, it was, oh, I don't feel like I'm the right body weight. I want to weigh less. Oh, when I am at this point over here, I'll weigh less and I'll feel better. But if you're looking at fertility too, it's like, oh, I don't have a baby right now. I wish I did. Over here, I will, this end goal, I will. But if we're not feeling that abundance, that joy, that love right now where we are in the moment, then we're creating a disconnect between those two moments in time. We're creating like separation in that reality.
When you're feeling super stuck or you're spiraling, I always use the phrase I'm spiraling. It's like usually the first sign that I'm spiraling is that I'm thinking and sometimes speaking like negative things about myself, like I hate my life, or like I can't believe this is happening, or why would this happen? I've already had, I've already gone through enough, like all of those like limiting beliefs. And self-love is just kind of like that thing that if you can get it in there and turn the key, you kind of unlock your ability to enjoy life again. I have a question for you.
Yes.
What do you do? Like tangibly, what do you do to practice self-love?
That's a good question. Because I wouldn't say that I am like have a certain, oh, this is my self-love or my self-love ritual. I wouldn't say those things to myself every day, but I do so many things that make me feel love for myself throughout the day. And I think there are a lot of little habits that have just added up over time. And I think there's some physical things. I think there's some mental, spiritual things as well. And I think what I've learned is that the mental, spiritual things, which sometimes that sometimes seem like they don't matter, or like it's not, physical, tangible. I think those are actually the most powerful things. And that's what I've learned in the last couple of years. So something like in the morning, I always, or almost always, do a meditation in the morning. So I do different types of meditation, but I think for me, that's really a self-love practice, because I'm, telling myself that I'm worthy enough to have this time. And in that time, I'm just feeling love and presence in the moment. Sometimes I experiment with a lot of different things, but sometimes I'll do a gratitude list, even journaling. Sometimes I'll write out a dream life manifesto. And I think those are all rituals of self-love too. I've done affirmations, but I find what's really helped me the most in terms of sort of shifting that mindset from a negative self-talk into more self-love is just awareness. So awareness of what I'm thinking. And I think that's really been the most powerful, of just slowly making changes in my mindset. So I don't, if something happens where I'm like, oh, why did that happen to me? Or, oh, why am I eating this when I know it's not good for me? Or I know I'm going to have a stomach ache after, because you're obviously not supposed to eat like half a bowl of cookie dough when you're making cookies, but for some reason I still do. So instead
I
of
feel called out.
Oh, no.
No, I'm just joking.
No, that's 100% personal, real problem.
Right.
But instead of jumping to those moments of negative self-talk, I become very aware now of when my mind starts to go to those places. I remind myself that thought that I'm having of my body shouldn't look this way, or I shouldn't eat that way because it's not the right way to eat. I catch myself in those moments before I let it spiral, actually. Right. So I also sometimes call it feeding the fire. So like a little bonfire, there's a spark of this old self. Actually, it's not even who I am right now. Right. It's who I used to be.
Right.
Yeah, it gets in there, and I just have to be aware. And so some things that some people can do or try to work on that awareness is having a post-it note on your computer. How am I feeling? Or what am I thinking? So that when those, first just being aware of what you're thinking and feeling all day long, it just helps create that awareness. And then we can slowly create a new thought, change our thought when those little old pieces of you try to sneak back in there, and they will. And I think it's that self-love of, okay, I know this is going to come up sometimes. I know my ego is going to try to self-sabotage me, because that's what the ego does. That's how it thrives.
So I would love to hear more about your book now. So I know that after you did physical training, you said you went back into advertising. And then did you recently leave the advertising field, or?
So
yeah, okay.
So again, my journey's not linear. It's all over the place,
right,
which is perfect in its own way.
Right.
So I went back to advertising. So working advertising field, I work in client services, project management, doing like TV commercials, brand campaigns, those kind of things. Yeah, it's cool in some ways, but it's also incredibly incredibly demanding industry for whatever reason. I know there's lots of fields like that too. Quite lots of them are, but it's not a 9-to-5 job. But
yeah, and
anyways,
it's not fully in line with your passions or your zone of genius, as Rebecca would say.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. I think I just hit a point where I was just going through the motions in my job and my work, where I would just kind of come home at the end of the day. This was probably about maybe like 3 years ago now. I'd come home at the end of the day, and I mean, I live in Toronto, but a bit outside of the city. So I started, because I had bought a house a bit in the GTA area from the city, I'd have to commute downtown. So I started commuting like an hour to, one time I had to commute an hour and a half almost to work. So that's there and back. And I'm working more than just 8 hours a day. And my fitness has always been important to me. So working out about 5 or 6 days a week at the gym for at least an hour after work was always something I would do. So pretty much I was only ever home from like 8 p.m. and then I would wake up and be gone out of the house by 7 or 8 p.m. too. So I was almost never home, and was just always in that cycle of going to work, working lots, going to the gym, eating, sleeping. And even on the weekends, I still was in this like very fast-paced mentality of like, okay, now we have to clean the house and get groceries and go to the gym again and do this over and over. And although I love the health aspect of it, I just, in some ways it wasn't healthy, because I was just like going into burnout. And I think sometimes I could just sleep for so long because my body was just so exhausted. Like if I let myself sleep in, I could sometimes sleep for like 9 or 10 hours. And I was like, oh, wow, I was really tired this week. And I was like, oh yeah, because I was working like go for 14 hours a day.
After you realized that you were kind of going into burnout, did you stop going into work? Like, where are you at now? Do you still commute, or?
Yeah, I think the decision was made for me when the pandemic happened. But before that happened, I was lucky that through my husband, he was going through some problems and health issues with his back at the time. And so he started, like, his sister shared a book with him, Dr. Joe Dispenza, The Becoming Supernatural, an incredible book. So he read that, and then I read that, and that just opened my mind up to health and healing in a way I'd never thought of before. And I just really felt called to that. And as he was going, like, my husband was kind of going through his health journey, I just felt emotionally really called to like be there for him, to help him, to, even though I didn't necessarily know what to do. It was just more of an energy thing, a spiritual thing. And so from there, we started reading more books, which we never did before. And we started going to some personal development events like in our area, which we never did before. And we came across some really great material, really great people. And I ended up doing a full like spiritual retreat in about like 6 months after, or almost a year getting into all that. And that's where the spiritual aspect of like the non-physical things, that the way we think, the way we feel, our energetic body, all those things just started making more sense to me, where I was very closed off before. I thought, oh, all that is just woo woo, like,
Yes.
I was that kind of mentality. And then I just started believing more and learning more about changing my thoughts and my beliefs and my identity.
Right.
Anyway, so when COVID happened and myself and many others were let go from my place of work at the end of March in 2020, and I felt like I cried for about, after I got off the phone with like my supervisor, I cried for a minute. And then I just like said to my husband, like, I'm so relieved. Like, this is what I've been waiting for. Like, this is perfect. And I know he felt like, but money, like, what are we going to do? And I was like, I don't know. It's just going to work out. And since then, everything just has worked out and everything has just flowed, and money's been taken care of. And from that was then like almost a couple days later was presented an opportunity of like, hey, here's a way of how you could start your health and wellness business. So it was in network marketing. And I was like, never would have looked at that before, but I was like in a place where I was just open, where I just felt things are aligned, things are flowing. Right. I have to be open to just exploring things I would never do before. And so if I never taken that first leap, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't have finished my book. Yes. So it was all in that time. April, I jumped into starting my business, looking at how I can help start coaching people. I signed up for my coaching certification program, and I started diving into, I was like, I have all this time now to start writing my book.
So that's always been a desire of yours then, to have a book?
No, it wasn't actually.
Really?
Yeah, no. So my husband at the time, when he went through sort of his healing journey, and when we started getting into personal development and growth and a bit more into spirituality, he came across a opportunity and way to write his book. And so he didn't know he wanted to write a book. It was a program that someone was sharing that we saw at an event. And his sister was the one that jumped in, was like, I think she had always wanted to write a book. So she said, I'm going to do this. And he was just in a place where I guess that day he just felt inspired of, why don't I do that too? We can write our books together. Just before COVID, in about February, I was at the gym one day and I was just like, the unicorn syndrome as a title just came to me. I was like, oh, we're all just living life trying to be like somebody else, trying to be like that magical unicorn, whether it's that female on the fitness magazine or that woman with a big perfect family or whatever it is. We're all trapped by this like unicorn syndrome, where we think we need to aspire to be and do more and have it all, when we already have all that. You already are worthy enough, perfectly unique, beautiful in your body and who you are in every way. And that's what we just need to break free from, that syndrome, and embrace who we are. And I was like, this is a book I need to write.
So your husband's book, was it published? Is it out?
Yeah, it was.
What's the name of his book?
So his first book is called Sleight of Mind. So he's actually started, he's a pretty good magician.
What? That's so cool.
Yeah, he does some pretty crazy stuff. He was, I think, so he's also in advertising. We met in school together. And I think he was at a point where he was feeling, also way before we discovered spirituality, where he was just feeling, I need something more. And he just magic. He just started watching YouTube videos and got really into it. So his book is the mindset twist of that. So his book is all about spirituality and of like mindset and changing your beliefs and limiting beliefs and all those things. So that's the tweak of it, Sleight of Mind. And he has a new book called Magic Spark. So they're both on Amazon too. But
that's awesome. So the basis of your book, obviously, the unicorn syndrome, stop trying to be unique. You already are. So the title was like the inspiration for you to actually write the content. That's really cool, because a lot of times it's backwards for authors.
Mhm.
And from the very beginning, you had this really clear goal as to what your message was. And so, yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about what you specifically address in that book?
It really is a lot of what we talked about in terms of my health, fitness, self-love journey. So the journey from the beginning all the way to where I am now. And just taking you through that story and that journey and getting kind of deep and real and personal in some of those moments and how those, kind of the ebbs and flows of it all. What was really important for me was just sharing that, like, so often we think that our health journey is supposed to be like we have this transformational point and then we're fixed,
Good.
we're happy, everything's good. But sometimes we have ups and downs. So I really wanted to share that with everyone, to just be like, I started over dozens and dozens of times in my health and fitness journey, and I'm still learning. So I really wanted to share all of that. And then throughout the book, I also get a lot more into different types of, I talk about the 4 dimensions of health. So physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, and mental health. And in there, I really break down different things that you can do in each of those areas to improve your health, work on it, try different things for creating just a happy life and just for feeling good in your body. So I really get into those physical to non-physical things, practices, different meditations, different ways of eating and moving your body, just talking about all the different things.
Yeah.
And it's really a buffet, like when it comes to health and mindset like that, because the last thing I ever would want anyone to feel is that the way I do things is the way you need to do things or someone else needs to do things. And that's one of the things that maybe really want to be a coach and help people, is to help them uncover what is your path of your most joy for your like most self-love, your best feeling body.
Do you have a place where listeners could connect with you if they want to follow along with your journey more?
Yes, I'm actively on Instagram quite often. So you can follow me at allison.woodley. Pretty
Yeah.
simple, over on the gram. And I have a website, which is just allisonwoodley.com. And on there, you can pre-order a copy of my book too.
Ooh.
Although the first batch of books will be going out just in a couple of days too. So it'll be up on
Yay.
Amazon soon, but hard copies, which are all limited edition copies with this matte finish that
it's
are
so pretty. As soon as you posted your like cover options in the collective group that we're in, and I was just so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Matte black is like one of my favorite textures. I don't know what. Yes. Oh my gosh, so pretty. We'll take a picture and post it on Instagram today. But I will definitely be linking her book. If you want to pre-order, go to her website. And yeah, I am just so honored that you've joined me today and shared your story. It's such a beautiful story. And I think all throughout what you shared about your childhood and then middle school and high school and all of that, it just so perfectly intertwines with your mission for your book, which is, that you already are unique, and you are, and your messaging and your impact, I know, is going to be huge. So thank you again, Allison, for joining me.
Oh, thank you. That means so much to me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Created Worthy podcast. If you want to connect more, you can follow along with me over at Danielle Damrell or Damrell Creative Co. on Instagram and Facebook. If you would like to help build a community, you can join the Created Worthy Community Facebook group, a no judgment zone and a place where you can come as you are and be inspired by other women who maybe have a creative processing idea or might even have a dilemma in life that they just want to share about and would like some honest advice. Side note, I am looking for a few honest souls and people who feel called to lead in a small capacity right now to be the admins of this group. I will show up as much as possible, but I would love to build the foundation of this group with a few other women who have the passion to love and provide a safe space for others. If this is you, email me. My email is in the show notes. Last, but certainly not least, if you learned something or gained value from this episode at all, share the love and send it to a friend or post a screenshot. If you post it on social media, be sure to tag me, although I am on a social media break right now, so I probably won't share it. But still, share the word. It means a lot. And please, take 5 seconds, scroll down on your phone, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. It really does matter. When you subscribe, rate, and review, you make it possible for other people similar to you to see my show. And that's so helpful. So please do it. 5 stars. 5 stars only. If you didn't like it, just don't listen again. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.